Individuals and businesses have donated millions of dollars to help people who suffered losses resulting from the Boston Marathon bombing. But as expected, the contributions to OneFund Boston will still fall short of full compensation, and getting help or relief from other sources can be a challenge. That's the reason for the online resource packets that were put together as a public service by the Boston Bar Association and its community partners. To tell us about these and some pro bono help is our guest, a member of the association who's also a partner with the law firm Hemenway and Barnes. We'd like to welcome Joseph Bierwirth. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for this opportunity.
One of the things I guess that people can find in these packets is, well, how you apply for help from OneFund Boston.
Well, that's right. The application process at OneFund Boston, as you know, was set up, and Ken Feinberg is administering the fund. And he set a fairly aggressive timeline for the applications. The application needs to be in by June 15th, and he wants to get money out to the door to victims of the marathon bombings by July 4th. Those are the goals that he set. The fund right now sits at about $36 million. The application process itself, on its face, it's not that complicated, but there are a few things where I think that it would be helpful to families and individuals, particularly those who are in the situation where they're recovering either from injuries or from grief over a stricken family member, to have the advice of a pro bono lawyer. And that's what the Boston Bar Association has accomplished by putting in place this program for a delivery of pro bono legal services.
Now, I imagine one thing that some advice might be good for is telling you if there's anybody else besides OneFund Boston who could be giving you help.
That's right. For instance, there is a program run through the Massachusetts Attorney General's office for victims of crime, and that's a sort of standing program. One of the problems with that program, although it's good for covering expenses and lost wages that might not be covered by any other source of benefits, is that it is limited to $25,000 per crime. So obviously that will cover some, but not all of the expenses that are being faced by some of these victims.
I think one of the most difficult things to do is to put a price on the heaviest losses, the loss of life. Do people need pro bono help for maybe doing that kind of calculus?
Well, in terms of the fund itself, what Mr. Feinberg has suggested he will do is what he's done in the past and set up different tiers. It's like any other application process. You want to put your best foot forward. There is a requirement in the application process that not all of your medical records be included, because for some victims those medical records are continuing, obviously, and there aren't permanent diagnoses for some of these victims yet. But at the very least, what you want to do is put in a statement from a doctor stating that your injuries were caused by the events of that marathon day, and also just to explain to the administrator sort of your background, the things that would perhaps not be known by looking at the face of an application that could sort of buttress your case, if you will. And the other thing about the OneFund application is that there is a chance also to have an interview with the administrator or with one of his staff. And that's something that might not be known to everyone. So it's little things like that where we believe that if there's a pro bono lawyer who's on your side, can help just guide you through that process. Everybody's looking for a fair and equitable result, and Mr. Feinberg has some very tough, difficult decisions to make. But as a lawyer, you're trained in looking at details, accumulating information, and presenting it in a favorable light, and that's what we're looking to do.
I know a lot of people have been pitching in since even the moment of the bombing to help, but what about people in the association who are stepping forward with the pro bono help? What do you think is driving them?
Oh, well, I think it's just a real urge to help out. I mean, this was obviously a series of horrific events that struck all of us in one way or another. So many people who I know were affected by this in a real personal way. And so far, the response from the legal community has been incredible. I know there was one firm, Goodwin Procter, downtown that represents the OneFund. They were able to obtain tax-exempt status for the OneFund itself. There are over 200 lawyer volunteers who have signed up for this program through the Boston Bar Association. I know some of the law schools have also put forward an effort to contribute to this cause. So it's just a real opportunity for where our specific skill set meets the need that's out there. So I think that that's what's driven a lot of lawyers to step up.
Another rather large class of people who were victimized by this bombing were people who either lost business revenue or lost wages because they couldn't work.
Right, right. And in fact, for those who were affected, it wasn't even so much the bombings themselves and the damage from the bombings, but it was necessary, obviously, but the police investigation and the closure of that part of the city for such a long period of time, it dramatically impacted the businesses. So what we wanted to do was to sort of take that off the table as far as a concern for these business owners. They're going to have to rebuild, they're going to have to get their businesses up, and that's what they're good at. But to take off the table for them finding a lawyer, hiring a lawyer, paying a lawyer, that was something that we thought was important. So what we'd like to do is step into the breach through this program and provide them with services. There are a host of legal issues that come up, whether it be dealing with insurance companies, as you mentioned, dealing with employees and what the right procedures to take are with respect to your employees who may not have been paid for that period of time when your business was out of action, dealing with your landlord if you're a business that's renting space. You know, so the BBA has put into place real estate lawyers, insurance lawyers, tax lawyers, people with different sets of skills who can bring those skills to bear on behalf of these folks.
The information package, you had some help in putting those together. Partners, I think some public agencies were involved in that.
That's right, that's right. It was a real effort beyond the Boston Bar Association itself. We coordinated with the mayor's office and some task force that have been set up to try to identify what the specific components of need were. And people devoted a substantial amount of time and expertise to putting together checklists that can be disseminated to business owners, for instance, or individuals and families who have been affected, and also to serve as a guide for the lawyers who are acting on the pro bono panel.
Because I know you have some specialties involved in that as well. So if people want to, first of all, start by looking at these checklists and packages, what's the best way for them to chase that down?
Well, they can contact the Boston Bar Association, and the phone number for that is 617-742-0625. And they'll then be directed to a specific attorney who might be able to help them out. And they'll also be directed to the information which we've posted on our website.
All right, well, thank you very much for being with us.
All right, Chris, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
From the Boston Bar Association, Joseph Bierwirth.